opportunity to be here. As you've all heard, I'm Professor Kelia Phillips. I'm a professor at Howard University in Washington, D.C. I'm in the field of nutrition, and I am deeply in the field of nutrition. This was not my initial stop on my journey. My background is in biochemistry. I spent a couple of years as a pharmaceutical sales rep, right? Selling drugs to physicians, marketing pharmaceutical drugs, right? And their uses. And I think that is where I saw the seed of something else for me. I was there marketing pharmaceutical drugs to physicians who would then prescribe them to patients. Patients were paying a lot of money for some of these drugs. Some of these were blockbuster drugs, just fresh off the market. Then it occurred to me that there must be a better way. There must be something that we can do before we get to this point where we're so heavily dependent on pharmaceuticals. Now, I must tell you that the field of nutrition is not outside of or against or instead of pharmaceuticals, but definitely taking care of ourselves and our nutrition can prevent us from getting to that point, or it can also be something that supplements what we do for our health. So today the topic is nutrition for healthy aging with HIV. I'm gonna go ahead and try to share my slides. Adriana, do I have the go ahead to do so?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, perfect. Perfect. All right, just give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen.
We're good to go.
Perfect. All right. So nutrition for healthy aging with HIV, right? Supporting immune health, preventing chronic disease, and promoting well-being through evidence-based nutrition strategies. I've already introduced myself. Adriana has done a very good job for me. But today's focus is as people living with HIV age, nutrition becomes increasingly vital for managing HIV-related health concerns, preventing additional chronic conditions. All right, and in this session, we will empower you with practical strategies to make informed food choices that strengthen your immune system and support overall well-being throughout the aging process. Now, why does this matter? Proper nutrition is directly supports immune function, helping your body respond effectively to infections, maintain resilience as you age with HIV. Chronic diseases prevention is also an imperative part of proper nutrition. Okay, proper nutrition directly supports your immune function, helping your body respond effectively to infections and to maintain resilience as you age with HIV. And of course, we can't ever forget the quality of life, right? Quality of life, there's balanced nutrition that enhances your energy levels, your mental clarity, physical strength, and overall vitality for daily activities and independence. So today, I hope that we will learn that HIV and aging we will learn of HIV and aging interactions, understanding how HIV and aging affect your metabolism, your immune system, your nutritional needs, understanding the essential nutrients. What are some of the key vitamins, minerals, and eating patterns that supports immune function and healthy aging? We will learn about disease prevention, how nutrition reduces risk of chronic conditions like diabetes, hypertension, osteoporosis, practical meal planning, right? To be realistic and have realistic strategies for preparing nutritious meals that fit your lifestyle and your budget. And overcoming barriers, discussing solutions for common challenges like appetite changes, food access, medication side effects. Living with HIV creates unique physiological changes that also intersect with natural aging. Understanding these changes helps us develop targeted nutrition strategies. As we age, our immune system experiences what's called immunosenescence. That's the gradual decline in immune function that will increase your vulnerability to infections and inflammation. And for people living with HIV, this process may occur earlier and more rapidly than the general population. Additionally, metabolic changes affect how our bodies process and how our bodies store nutrients. Fat distribution shifts, insulin sensitivity may decrease, and the risk of metabolic syndrome increases. And we probably have heard of metabolic syndrome before. And this is a cluster of conditions that increase the risks of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and it's characterized by having 3 of, I think, 5 risk factors. Whether you have abdominal obesity, all right, that's when we're putting on weight in the central area of our body, presenting like an apple shape versus a pear shape. Sometimes we confuse it and call it a beer belly sort of situation, right? Other things that characterize metabolic syndrome include high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high triglycerides, and low HDL cholesterol. Okay? So these changes make nutrition even more critical for maintaining health and preventing complications. Some key physiological changes that we will experience include immune aging. That's the chronic low-level inflammation throughout the body that can occur with immune aging, right? Reduced ability to fight new infections, slower recovery from illness, increased autoimmune responses. Other physiological changes include metabolic shifts, changes in the body's fat distribution, decreased insulin sensitivity and glucose tolerance, altered cholesterol and triglyceride metabolism, and the dreaded slower metabolic rate, right? This is natural and this will occur. And of course, with that slower metabolic rate, it becomes a little bit harder to push off that weight increase, right? That fat accretion. Other physiological changes include bone and muscle loss. All right, there's accelerated loss of bone density that can lead to osteopenia or osteoporosis. Okay, sarcopenia, which is the aggressive muscle mass decline or progressive muscle mass decline, increase fracture risk and reduce strength and mobility. And just to spend a little bit more time on bone and muscle loss, that's a physiological change that we should expect. When we talk about bone loss, we are talking about the natural occurrence in the body, right? I heard Adriana say that we're in the 50 plus strong and healthy group here, right? So none of us are 20 odd, but when we're in our 20s, when we're of a lower age than that, we're accumulating bone, right? There is bone accretion, right? And the bone accretion is almost like a bank account, right? We have a certain time where we can put into that bank account, where we can build the bones. But after a particular time, there's no building of bones, and there may be the slow loss of bones. Every 10 years, you have a new skeleton. Sounds ridiculous, but every 10 years, you end up with a complete new bone skeleton structure. And as we talk together here, you are building bone and you're losing bone all at the same time. When you're younger, you're building more than you're losing. But as we grow older, there's a shift in that rate and the pace at which we're building and at which we're losing. And we tend to have an overall loss of bone. Okay? So when I say that every 10 years we have a new skeleton, it's not all your bones go. It is more like when you're remodeling a house. It's a slow remodeling where you remodel one room at a time, right? And over time, you realize that the entire house has changed versus something like a full gut rehab job of a house. You can see it as you experience your own life, your own environment, your own family, your friends, people that you've interacted with. When you were younger and you were in school, right? And you had your teachers, your professors, and you see them now, right? You realize that, most of them have turned into sweet little old ladies, right? Because you see them losing their bone mass and getting just a little shorter. That is a natural physiological change that we should expect. Other key physiological changes are medication complexity, multiple medications, polypharmacy that can affect nutrient absorption, right? Can cause drug nutrient interactions, gastrointestinal side effects, appetite and taste changes, all of which has the potential to affect our nutritional status. All right, perfect. Okay. Now, how does nutrition impact HIV and aging? The power of food as medicine, and you've probably heard this term, food is medicine. Let thy food be thy medicine, right? Quite a lot of different ways in which people are communicating this. Nutrient-dense foods provide the building blocks for your immune system, right? And your immune system needs the nutrient density of foods to function optimally. In addition, consistent, adequate energy intake prevents the body from breaking down muscle for fuel. That's a particular concern for aging adults. That's a particular concern for individuals living with HIV. Okay? Quite a lot of us will think about the calories that we consume. The calories that we consume must be consistent, and it must be adequate. Please don't confuse general nutrition recommendations with what needs to be applicable to you in your stage of life, right? Your stage of the life cycle. Maintaining muscle at this stage is very important. And to maintain muscle, we must have adequate calories because your body will always try to keep itself going. And if you don't have adequate calories, for your body's normal energy needs, your body will tend to try to pull that energy from other places. We have our fat stores that our body may pull from. All of us would be happy if that's the only thing that happened. But also, your body may start to break down muscle tissue in order to liberate energy that is lacking or that is adequate when we don't have adequate energy intake. All right? The foods you eat can enhance your antiretroviral therapy effectiveness while minimizing side effects. Proper nutrition also plays a crucial role in preventing comorbidities such as cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and kidney disease. Those are conditions that occur at higher rates in aging adults, right? And in adults with HIV. Now, if I should speak on the top 10 causes of death in the United States, right? 4 of those causes of death in the top 10 are directly related to nutrition. So nutrition really plays a vital role, right, in just ensuring that we are healthy, that we have a chance to defend against some of those comorbid conditions that we generally experience. Now, some of the core principles of HIV supported nutrition include high nutrient density, anti-inflammatory factors, whole minimally processed foods, and blood sugar control. Speaking of high nutrient density, we need to choose foods that pack maximum vitamins, minerals, and beneficial compounds into every bite. Think colorful vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, rather than empty calories, right? Some years ago, they had a national campaign, Eat the Rainbow was the theme, and it still applies. Think about foods that are colorful. The color of the food makes it attractive, but it also confers different levels of nutrients in the diet. Think about something that's bright orange, right? Like an orange. What do we expect from an orange? Lots of vitamin C. Think about some of our other colorful fruits and vegetables. Think about a blueberry. Blueberry, we get vitamin C, we get fiber, but we also get a lot of phytochemicals from the different colors of the different foods in our diets. When we think of wholly minimally processed foods, right, we are thinking we want to emphasize foods in their natural state or with minimal process to preserve nutrients, fiber, beneficial phytochemicals while avoiding excessive sodium, sugar, and unhealthy fats. Now, we all know processed foods and we think about it and we know we should avoid it. Some processed foods are, depending on the level of processing, are okay. Think about when you go out to the grocery store and you buy maybe some onions, right? Or onions that are already chopped. The onions that are already chopped have gone through a process and they are processed foods. But when we think about minimally processed, we are thinking of those foods that we consume in a completely different way from its natural state. Think about potatoes, for instance. We could purchase a potato and hold it and lift it with the skin on, right? Or we could end up purchasing something like a powdered potato where we just add water to make mashed potatoes. You want to try to consume your foods in their most natural state, because in their most natural state they will give you the nutrients that naturally occur within them. We think of anti-inflammatory factors and the focus on anti-inflammatory foods. We want to select foods that reduce inflammation throughout the body, omega-3 fatty acids, colorful fruits and vegetables, herbs and spices, right? To counter that chronic inflammation that's common in HIV and that's common in aging. And of course, blood sugar control, okay? We want to pair carbohydrates with proteins and healthy fats to maintain steady energy, prevent fatigue, reduce the risk of insulin resistance and diabetes, okay? We want to consume our carbohydrates in a healthy form. Think about carbohydrates that are more complex carbohydrates. Think about fruits with the fiber. Think about fruits with the skin. Think about the whole fruit versus something like just the fruit juice. And I want you guys to consider and ensure that you do not drink your candy. We will explore that a little bit later in the next couple of slides. Now here, I just want you guys to look, right? And think of a way to judge which foods are most nutritious, right? Thinking back to nutrient density. And I want you guys to go ahead and put it in the chat. Adriana, help me out with this. Which plate do you think is more nutritious? Consider this plate A and this one B. Let me see your answers in the chat if you're still with me.
Yeah, people are mentioning left and A. A.
Left is A, B is right. All
Yes.
right. Good, I see a lot of A's. Now, let me ask you one more question. Of the left, that's A, or the B, that's right. Which one do you think gives the body more calories? I see some B's, I see some A's. All right. No, don't be mad at me, guys, but that was a trick question. All right? Because both of these plates gives us round about 500 calories, right? These two breakfasts, they provide about 500 calories each, but they differ significantly in the nutrients that they provide per calorie, right? And this is what nutrient density is. Right? Note that the sausage in the larger breakfast, right? It's a lower calorie turkey sausage, all right? I know you couldn't tell that from the photo, right? It's not the high calorie pork variety, okay? And making small choices like this at each meal can add up to large calorie savings, making room in the diet for more servings of nutritious foods and even some treats. But we're looking at both of these meals. Which meals would make you feel more satisfied, would make you feel more full? Both of them will give you the same calories, right? But we're looking at the nutrient density, right? Meal A here gives us significantly more calcium, more iron, vitamin A and vitamin C. And this is what nutrient density is all about. In the same caloric package, right? In the same budget of calories, we are getting significantly more vitamins and minerals. Okay? All right. Adriana, if there are any questions on this topic, please save it for me. Okay? Now, we talked about the core principles. We spent a little bit more time on the high nutrient density. Now, I asked you a question. Do you drink your candy? Can anybody share or tell me yes or no in the chat? Nope. All right. All right. Good. Good. Now, if you've been to any sort of health fair, you've probably seen something like this before, where individuals are trying to show you visually exactly what's going on. Do you know that the average American consumes 70 pounds of sugar annually? This seems like a lot, and it is. And of course, a couple of you are thinking, absolutely not. But our foods tend to have a lot of added sugar. We tend to consume way more sugar than we think about. Here is a visual of some of the beverages that we consume and the amount of sugar that they contain. All right. Some of them are a little bit typical. We expect that with sodas, we're going to have a lot of sugar, right? Like a can of soda. And I always do this for emphasis. When you are consuming a can of soda, you are having not one, not 2 teaspoons, but you're having teaspoons and teaspoons and teaspoons and teaspoons and teaspoons and teaspoons. Hold on. And teaspoons and teaspoons and teaspoons of sugar, right? One can of soda can offer you up to 12 teaspoons of sugar. And would you consider sitting and having anything with 12 teaspoons of sugar? Absolutely not. But this is what happens when we consume beverages that tends to be laden with sugars. Now, sodas are the initial culprits. We all think about them, but what about some of the other beverages? Other beverages that have increased in popularity, things like sports drink. They tend to have a lot of added sugar. Think about those fancy bottles of frappuccino, cappuccino sort of beverages, right? It's important that we check out our label. We look to see exactly the amount of sugar that is there. We consider the sugar in one serving, not the entire container, right? And we consider that because this is what we're consuming and this is what's going to add up over time to get the average American to be consuming 50 to 70 pounds of sugar per year. So I ask you again, are you drinking your candy? And this visual is taken from this reference right here, Nutrition Education Store. We used one of their posters in recently in a little health event, and it was so impactful to see the amount of sugar in some of these beverages. All right, take for instance the sports drink with 35 grams of sugar. And that is equivalent to about 13 lollipops, right? Let's not even go up as yet. Think about things like juice drink. And I know you've heard this before because you've had other nutrition conversations. When we talk about beverages, right, we're talking about all beverages. We're talking about those that may present as if they're healthy. When you see fruit juice and you see something like fruit drink, you must understand the difference. You wouldn't believe how many times I've heard people tell me that they give their children juice or they consume juice and they're talking about things like Hawaiian punch, all right? Things like Hawaiian punch, anything that's a juice drink is not fruit juice. There is a minimal amount of fruit juice actually in that container. But what is there is a little bit of fruit juice, a lot of water, and a lot of added sugar, right? Which is gonna add up to the amount of candy that we're actually drinking. Now, if you go further up the line here, you see that we have cans of soda. Then don't forget about the supersized beverages that we sometimes consume, right? Thinking that it's more value for our dollar that we spend. But what is it that we're spending our money on? These are considerations, right? As we think about our general health. And of course, at the bottom, the beverage of choice, being a dietitian that I'm going to recommend, is something like water. Water does what beverages should be doing, hydrating our bodies, all right? And with water, there's no added sugar, all right? Good. Now, this is another poster from that same place we saw initially. And this is the sugar math. It talks about a healthy diet, right? Should include no more than 10% of calories from added sugar. These recommendations are very sound, but at times they're going to be a little bit harder to follow. 10% of calories from sugar. First of all, we need to know what our calories should be. We need to know when we're at 10%, we have to have a way to count, and it is very impractical to ask individuals to count your calories as you go to determine if you're at 10% or not, right? So the rule of thumb here is that you should consider the food item, the nutrition label, and think about including those items with less added sugars, all right? Okay, 50 grams is about 12 teaspoons of sugar. So if your item is saying that it's giving you 42 grams or 50 grams of added sugar, you know that you're about 10 or 12 teaspoons of sugar that is added to that particular item. Now, it doesn't even taste that sweet for you to think, oh my goodness, I taste 12 teaspoons of sugar. Absolutely not, right? Sometimes the items, the ingredients are melded so well, you don't even feel the full impact, punch of the extra sweetness that's there, all right? But think about some of those places and identify those spots where we're having a lot of those added sugars. Think about your beverages. Think about your candies. Think about things like even your cereal. How many of us still pull for the frosted flakes? All right? And think about your desserts. All right? And if you can, always check your nutrition label. Your nutrition label doesn't have to be checked every single time. But if you go to the grocery store for the next week and you keep looking at your labels, you will have a general idea of those foods that will have a lot of added sugar. Now, it's not something that you may be able to escape completely, but within a particular food group, if you choose the item that has less added sugar, right, and you have that as your go-to, you would inadvertently or you would naturally be reducing the amount of sugar that you're getting from that item by choosing always the one that has the lesser amount of added sugars. All right. When we think of building your personalized food plan, don't think I'm biased, but I think that everybody should have a doctor, a dentist, and a dietitian, right? That's somebody like me on your team, all right? You want to partner with an RD. There are lots of resources available. Some you've seen very regularly, and we'll explore one of those tools coming up next, right? You want to visit myplate.gov, right? Select your calorie level, align it with your weight, your goals, whether you want to maintain or lose, all right? And you want to create your own individualized plan. Lots of presentations have occurred, I've seen, where people put a diet plan up on the screen, right? Or present it to individuals in a handout. Your diet plan has to be individualized to, you got it, to you, okay? Nothing general. Everything has to take into account you, your height, your weight, your physical activity, right? Your lifestyle, your preferences must be included in that diet plan for it to be effective for you. You've all seen this before. You've all seen this healthy plate model, all right? And you see how generic that healthy plate model is. That is because it can be individualized to you, okay? It's a simple visual guide. It helps you build balanced meals that support your health goals, all right? And in this visual, what we have here is a plate that is no more than 8 inches across, all right? 8 inches wide, because anything larger would not be a plate. It would actually be a platter to serve 2 or more individuals, okay? Now, half of this plate has colorful fruits and vegetables. And every time I say fruits and vegetables, I need to remind myself that I need to say vegetables and fruits, because a lot of us tend to prioritize the fruits over the vegetables, right? And we need to think about prioritizing vegetables, right? A lot more, right? Or fruits gives us vitamins and minerals like our vegetables, gives us fiber, but in our fruits we tend to have a lot of natural sugars and a little bit more calories, all right? So half your plate, right, should be filled with a rainbow of produce, different colors, providing different antioxidants, phytonutrients, right? Think about your dark leafy greens, your deep oranges, your sweet potatoes, your red tomatoes, your cabbages, your purple cabbages, right? Your colorful shards. Think about that and more, okay? And in this area, you want to make sure that you are preserving the nutrients of your colorful fruits, colorful vegetables, right? And there are ways to do that, right? You don't want to cook the life out of your vegetables, right? You want to start to practice cooking techniques that preserve those nutrients, right? If you've ever had vegetables that you've boiled and you see the water take on the color of the vegetables, and then what do we do with all of that water? We pour it down the sink, and down the sink goes a lot of the nutrients, right, that would have been in those vegetables. Think about preparing your vegetables with the least amount of water. Think about steaming them. Think about ensuring that when they're done, they still have lively color to them, right? Now that's half of your plate. Your other half is whole grains. Choose brown rice, quinoa, whole wheat pasta, oats, whole grain breads, right? These provide sustained energy, valuable fiber for digestive and heart health, all right? Now, when you think of this quarter of your plate, that's grains. All of it does not need to be brown rice. It doesn't need to be quinoa, but at least half of your whole grains should be of the whole grain variety. And let me just say that again. At least half of your grains should be of the whole grain variety. All right. Regularly commonly confused item about whether or not it's whole grain or not is something like bread, right? When we think of things like bread, right, don't be confused by the color of the bread. Because the bread is brown doesn't mean it's whole grain, right? You must look at the label. You must see the word whole there. You must see whole grain in order for it to qualify as something that is whole grain. Don't be distracted when you see like 9 ancient grains, or you see high fiber, right? If you don't see the word WHOLE, right? You need to question whether or not that is going to fit into your whole grain offerings for the day. Now, on this plate, we also have a quarter of the plate being lean protein. Lots of people have complained about the my plate visual and saying it's encouraging just people to eat meats and they're vegetarians or they're vegans. Nothing on this plate actually says meat, right? It says protein, right? And we want to include lean protein. We want to include fish, skinless poultry, but we can also include beans, lentils, right? Tofu, all right? Those are things that are high in protein, all right? And we talked a little bit about the muscle mass. Protein preserves muscle mass. It supports your immune function, right? And we need to ensure that it's there on our plate. When we put it on our plate, we don't want to compromise other things. We don't want the protein to be the fatty variety. Think about things like those succulent, fatty, juicy ribs, right? That we really enjoy at times because of the fat content that confers tenderness to the item, right? We want to think of including lean protein. For us on this call, we need to consider also protein that is of a high biological value. All right, there is protein and there is protein. There's animal protein, there is plant protein, and of the two, the animal protein is of a higher biological value than the plant protein. Now, for vegetarians and vegans, I'm not discrediting the protein at all, but I want you to consider this when you think about the importance of protein to you in your current stage of life. All right, and of course we want to add healthy fats. Okay, there was a time, hold on, before I started to study nutrition when I was way younger, and I thought I am eliminating all fat from my diet. I think I was in my teen years, but now we understand that there are fats that are healthy for us, and our body needs fats, right? We want to incorporate olive oil, avocado, nuts, or seeds, right? These fats will help to absorb fat-soluble vitamins and provide anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids. If your diet doesn't have any fat in it, which is kind of hard to achieve, it means that your diet will not have a whole host of vitamins. There is a whole host of vitamins, fat-soluble vitamins, vitamins A, D, E, and K, that are fat-soluble. They exist in fats, right? And if we exclude fats, we are inadvertently excluding some of those fat-soluble vitamins, right? Good. Now, for us here, right, for this group, meal timing and energy balance is important, right? Consistency matters. Skipping meals, which you may hear on social media, we're doing intermittent fasting, we're doing all these variations, right? These may be okay for the general public, the general healthy individual with no other medical concerns, right? But for us, skipping meals may cause blood sugar to drop. That may lead to fatigue, difficulty concentrating, increased stress on your body. Now, for people that are aging, for people with HIV, we want to maintain steady energy intake throughout the day, right? Because this will support our immune function, and it will also prevent muscle breakdown in those moments where our body has no calories, it has no other forms of energy, and then it starts to deplete the body's tissue, breaking them down in order to liberate energy. All right. So regular meal patterns also help medications work more effectively and reduce gastrointestinal side effects. All right. When you eat at consistent times, your body develops predictable rhythms that improve digestion and nutrient absorption. Okay. Protein distribution. And let me tell you, you want to aim to have protein in at every meal. The numbers here are very conservative. Your number can be determined when you work with a dietitian. How much protein does your body need? All right. And you want to aim for protein at each meal rather than consuming just a protein at dinner, right? And this helps to maximize your muscle protein synthesis throughout the day, which is especially important for preventing sarcopenia in aging adults. Okay. Now, smart snacking. This group, we're too mature to be snacking on cheese puffs, fruit roll-ups, potato chips, veggie chips, right? There are some smart snacking ideas if we do need to snack. We think about nutrient density. We think about including protein in those snacks as well. Let's think about things like trail mix with nuts and dried fruit, right? Hard-boiled eggs with whole grain crackers, hummus with vegetable sticks, right? Apple slices, peanut with peanut butter, Greek yogurt with berries and almonds. These are just some simple combinations, but if you look at it, what you notice is that these snacks have protein, they have items that are nutrient dense, right? And it avoids those items that are filled with calorie and therefore they're calorically dense without giving us the nutrients that our body will need. Okay, so we're back again at essential nutrient, protein. Protein we know is the building block for immunity and for strength, right? And this matters, right? Protein is absolutely critical for maintaining muscle mass, for supporting immune function, for promoting tissue repair. Aging adults living with HIV often need more protein than the general population. And I say this just to reiterate that things that you hear generally, right, in those video clips, those reels, right, they may be very accurate, but they may not be necessarily accurate for you, all right? Typically, your body will require about 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight each day, right? And potentially more if you're physically active or if you're recovering from illness. Lots of times we hear those social media influencers just saying things like, you need to consume 1 gram of protein per pound, and you really don't know what it is that they're using to generate these recommendations, right? But it's very important that you understand that your body may require a little bit more protein, right? It may require 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram. And this is something that you can work with your dietitian to establish what are the levels that you should be aiming for to maintain your health, all right? And some of your best protein sources are your fatty fish, your salmon, mackerel, sardines, your poultry, right? Skinless poultry. And I think you know why we're talking about skinless, right? The legumes, beans, lentils, chickpeas, right? Tofu, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, eggs, lean beef or pork, okay? And this matters. It's imperative that we understand that it matters. Every cell in your immune system requires protein to function. Your antibodies, your enzymes, any immune signaling molecules, they're all made from protein. And without adequate intake, your body's gonna break down muscle tissue to access amino acids, right? That's gonna lead to weakness, fatigue, impaired immune response, a little muscle wasting. Remember, your body does not store protein. Protein in your body is utilized in your muscles, in your tissue. And if If your body's breaking down protein, that means it's breaking down muscle, it's breaking down tissue. Okay, all right, vitamins and minerals, and I know I have a time limit, but let me try to speed this up, all right? Vitamins, vitamin D, a fat-soluble vitamin, right? It's important for bone health, immune regulation, mood support. Sources are fatty fish, fortified dairy, plant milk, egg yolk, sunlight, right? Supplementation is often needed. Generally, we tend to be a little bit vitamin D insufficient, right, or deficient. If you're in an area now that's experiencing winter, we may not have direct access to that sunlight exposure to help our body creates its own vitamin D. All right, B vitamins are important for energy metabolism, brain health, red blood cell formation. All right, and our sources are whole grain, leafy greens, eggs, poultry, fish, and fortified cereals. Lots of us take some vitamin B vitamins, right? We take our supplements, and these B vitamins, they're a little tricky. We take the supplements, and immediately afterwards, when we go to the bathroom and we pass some urine, our urine is nice and brightly colored, not because we're dehydrated, right? But because the body does not store these B vitamins, these water soluble vitamins. So when we take those supplements with the high concentrations, right, our body will use what it needs, and the rest of it is going to be excreted out. And what we have done is we've created a little bit more expensive urine. All right, think about the nutrient density of your meals, and think about those colorful fruits and vegetables, and ensuring that we're getting our nutrients or vitamins or B vitamins or water soluble vitamins from the foods that we consume. Always choosing to go with getting your nutrients from the food is better than getting it from supplements, unless, of course, you're deficient and the supplement is definitely indicated. Things like zinc and selenium that supports our immune cell function, right, for wound healing, antioxidant protection, iron, calcium, and magnesium that helps with our bone density, muscle function, cardiovascular health. Now, let's not forget our omega-3 fatty acids, right? These anti-inflammatory fats are particularly important for people living with HIV because they help counter chronic inflammation, right? Omega-3 support our heart health or brain function, and it may help reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. Okay? Fiber, always underrated, right? But fiber is imperative. There is your gut and your immune connection. And this connection between your gut and your immunity, it can't be overstated, right? Approximately 70% of your immune system resides in your gut, right? Where your beneficial bacteria help to defend against pathogens and regulate your immune response, right? Now, these bacteria are beneficial for us, and the fiber that we consume helps to feed those beneficial bacteria, all right? And we need to feed those bacteria so that we can have a thriving gut microbiome. Now, here is the thing. If your diet is predominantly fast food, empty calories, sugary beverages, guess which bacteria will thrive in your gut? But if your diet is predominantly nutrient-dense foods, foods that are healthier, foods that are fresh, right? That will feed the bacteria that can thrive on those foods, right? So there are health benefits, all right, to fiber in your diet. It supports beneficial gut bacteria. It reduces cholesterol levels. It helps control blood pressure, stabilize blood glucose, promotes regular bowel movements, reduce inflammation. Some of the foods that are rich in fibers include those whole grains, all right? Be sure to know a couple of them and add them, include them in foods that you regularly consume. Your legumes, your fruits, your vegetables, your nuts, all right? There are recommendations to aim for 25 to 35 grams of fiber daily. Okay. All right, I see some messages coming in. Let me just double check. Okay, good. All right. Now, at times we may have issues that may impact our nutritional status. Things like appetite and taste changes. When you don't have a strong appetite, you don't consume foods. You don't consume balanced meals, right? When your taste changes, when the usual foods that usually confer a sort of pleasure to your taste buds no longer do it, we don't consume it, right? But it's important that we consider that we need to have our nutrients in. We have to have a consistent intake of calories, right? Consistent nutrient intake. We want to be sure that we're not ignoring this. We want to identify the causes. Is it medication related? Do we have mouth sores, dry mouth, nausea, gastrointestinal issues? That can all affect appetite and taste perception, right? And if we're experiencing any of this, there are things that we can do. We can adjust our meal size. Instead of trying to consume 3 large meals for the day, we can break our meals down into 5 to 6 small meals throughout the day, right? Ensuring that within those small meals, we are still thinking about nutrient density, all right? We want to enhance flavors. Sometimes when our taste perception goes, right? Individuals, I've worked with a lot of individuals who've been hospitalized. You're ill, the food doesn't taste the same. Sometimes we can enhance the flavor. Every time people think and hear that I'm a dietitian coming to talk about what they eat, they think what I'm talking about are things that are not going to be delicious, right? I'm going to talk about healthy foods that taste like cardboard. Absolutely not, right? Because quality of life is important, and meals confer more than just nutrients, right? We want to use our flavor enhancers. We want to use our herbs or spices, lemon juice, marinades to add flavor to our foods without the excess sodium or sugars, all right? Not everything has to have a lot of, Old Bay sauce or accent salt, right? We can use our herbs. We can use our garlics or onions or garlic powders or onion powders or thyme or scallion. Of course, you hear the herbs that I'm thinking of are definitely herbs that I appreciate to bring about flavor, right? To enhance the flavor, to stimulate our appetite, all right? We may need to do things like modify texture. If we have mouth or sores or dry mouth, we may choose to soften foods, moisten the foods, include smoothies, soups, right? Vegetables that are cooked, right? Things that don't take a lot of effort to chew, all right? So if appetite loss persists, speak with your healthcare team about possible solutions, all right? Maintain adequate calorie and protein intake, right? Because it's essential for preserving strength and for preserving our immune function. All right. What about if we have to be navigating weight changes, right? Unintended weight loss. It's always a trigger, sends up an alert for any dietitian or nutrition professional, all right? Weight loss can indicate inadequate nutrition. It can also indicate increased metabolic demands, right? Where our body is burning through a lot more calories than it usually does. Or it could be medication side effect, right? Loss of muscle mass is of particular concern. If we're losing weight, it would be amazing and ideal if the body just lost fat, but that's not always the case, right? We may lose some body fat, we may lose a little muscle, and preserving our muscle at this age, right? If we have HIV is of particular concern to us, all right? So strategies to gain weight are listed here, right? We wanna probably add calorie dense foods, all right? Include protein at every meal and snack. Drink smoothies. We may at this point in time think about including protein powders, right? Fruits, nut butter, all right? And we want to focus on nutrient density rather than just empty calories. What about if there's unintended weight gain, right? Some medications and metabolic changes can lead to weight gain, particularly around the abdomen, all right? Lipodystrophy, that's the abnormal fat distribution, is going to require some specialized management, Okay, and strategies for healthy weight management are controlling your portion size. Use the plate method that we talked about, right? Limit your added sugar and refined carbohydrates and try not to drink your candy. Choose lean proteins and healthy fats. Increase your vegetable intake for satiety with fewer calories. And of course, stay physically active with cardio and strength training. If you're experiencing gastrointestinal issues, all right, nausea, diarrhea, constipation, right, there are methods and ways and strategies that you can utilize to combat some of these, all right. Eating bland, easily digested food when we feel nauseated, like crackers and toast, all right. We want to avoid strong odors, greasy foods that tend to exacerbate the feeling of nausea. You may sip on some ginger tea or try ginger chews, right? Eat cold foods, right? If hot foods would trigger your nausea. And take medications with food unless you're instructed otherwise. If there is diarrhea, we always want to consider what we're losing, right? And we want to stay well hydrated with water, broth, electrolyte beverages, right? We may need to avoid caffeine, alcohol, high-fat foods. We want to try soluble foods, soluble fiber foods like oatmeal, bananas, applesauce, all right? Eat smaller, more frequent meals and consider probiotics, right? After consulting your provider. And if there's constipation, most of us know we need to increase fiber, but very important. When we increase fiber, we want to do it gradually, and we must also increase the water, all right? We could include things like prune and kiwi or flax seeds, stay physically active, and establish regular bathroom routines. Other things of concern is food and water safety. Safe food handling is critical for anybody with compromised immunity, right? Proper storage is also safe food handling, right? You must understand temperature control, shelf life. You must understand that if you're reheating food, and you reheat that food and in the middle it's a little cold, it's not reheated adequately for you to consume. Think about things, no, it's not the summer, but when you go out and you see food sitting in a container for you to consume, you have to contemplate the temperature. Was it at the right temperature? Temperature is important. Temperature determines if you can have a proliferation of bacteria, right, within that food, or if the temperature is hot enough to reduce that proliferation of bacteria, making it a little bit healthier and safer for you to consume. When you're dining out, right, you still must consider that, right? The menu choices, food preparation questions when you're eating away from home, nothing is out of bounds for you to ask if that's a question that you need answered. All right? Good. Now, I have slides here on overcoming food insecurity. All right? We know at this time, everybody feels it, right? When you go to the supermarket now with your $100, you come out with far less than you did 2 years ago, all right? So, budget-friendly nutrition could include things like buying frozen vegetables and fruits, right? Frozen vegetables and fruits are not subpar. Frozen fruits and vegetables are harvested and they're frozen usually in their peak levels of harvest, all right? They're just as nutritious, all right? You may have to choose canned beans, lentils, fish. Now, when you do that, always try to seek out the lower sodium varieties, all right? Because we also want to think about our general health, and we want to think about generally reducing sodium in our diet or not including too much. Canned food items will tend to have a lot of sodium for preservation, all right? Sometimes we're able to purchase canned food items, we're able to wash it off, we're able to open it, fill it with water, pour out the contents, fill it with water again, swirl it around, and remove some of that sodium. But usually these foods are resting in that brine, that salty fluid for some time, and it's not going to eliminate all of the sodium, but it will reduce it, all right? Think about purchasing foods like whole chicken versus the portions that are cut up already. Every time a process is done to a food, it adds to the cost of the food item. If you're able to purchase that chicken and cut it up yourself, you'd have saved yourself a lot. And you can look at this and see it when you look at the labels and they tell you how much it is per pound. All right? Buy store brand and shop sales with your list. Think about the meals that you're gonna consume, right? Think about the items that you require. Check out the sales, right? And if they are there, then purchase them on sale. Okay? Plan your meals around affordable staples like rice, oats, pastas, and eggs. Eggs is on this list. There was a time when the egg prices went up, but I think they're coming back down. Think about the community resources that you have available. I, for one, every weekend, usually on Saturdays, I am out at a food drive, volunteering, right? Packing bags, handing them out. And I am surprised at times about the quality of food that is available. They have foods that I would think about buying in the grocery store. So, and a lot of these food drives are thinking about general dignity of participants. No questions, no do you qualify or not. As long as you turn up, right, they will have something for you. And of course, I have some simple ingredient meals, but I won't spend too much time there. All right, good. All right, good. Adriana, can you tell me if I have more time? Do I need to pause for questions?
It is 4:10. You were supposed to go until 4. So you can start wrapping up.
All
I
right.
sent you the questions in advance, but you have kind of knocked all of the answers to those questions out. But we can still open it up. So you can go ahead and just go to 4:30.
All right,
So
great. Thank
10
you.
more, 10 more yeah, so you have 10 more minutes.
I apologize to anybody who had to leave, but I could sit and talk about nutrition forever. I could talk about each of these slides for another 1 hour each. But please, bear with me if you can. Put your questions in. I love to hear what you have to ask, what you have to say, right? And I'm looking forward to it. Some of this material I know you've covered before, right? Things like smart shopping and label reading, right? We can utilize our habits to our own benefit. When you get into the grocery store, first of all, don't go in there hungry. I don't know if you've ever gone to the grocery store hungry. You've probably taken up a bag of grapes, you put it on the top, and by the time you get to the cashier, half of the grapes are gone. And if you're hungry, we tend to pull easy items, right? We tend to pull the chips, the bars, the things that we can just quickly pop in the mouth by the time we get to we do it without thinking about it. So when we go grocery shopping, ensure that you are not hungry, all right? And this is kind of in the middle of the list, all right? Because when you're hungry, everything looks appealing. Everything looks delicious, except for those healthy foods that you know you need to come home and prepare, all right? When you go to the grocery store, shop the perimeter of the store first. That's where you're gonna find your fresh produce, your proteins, your dairy, right? Your vegetables and fruits are around the edges. Your foods that are in their most whole form will be around the perimeter of the grocery store. Okay? Make a list and stick to it. Reduce your impulse purchases, right? That's gonna save you a lot of money. And be sure that you understand what the unit pricing is in the grocery store. Lots of time we think the larger sizes of items, right, are always better. Then we see one item, we see a lot of different brands, and we cannot make a good comparison. Understand the unit pricing. The unit pricing actually compares the price, not necessarily per container, but per unit. It may tell you how much each container is actually selling you each ounce of item for, and that way you can make a better judgment. All right, check your sales, use your coupons, right? We have advanced from sitting down and cutting and clipping coupons. Most stores have their own apps where they can download or send you coupons, right? Don't toss that out. If you're able to do it, please go ahead. all right? And you want to buy seasonal produce. They are more affordable, they are more flavorful, right? When things are in season, they are always cheaper, all right? Have you ever gone out and tried to buy cherries when they're out of season? The cost per pound is astronomical, right? But when it's in season, right, the cost tends to be a little bit lower, okay? Some of this demands a little bit of discipline as well. We may like a particular thing and we may try to buy it out of season, but explore other items that are in season, other recipes, right? So that you're keeping your budget, your food budget cost down. Now, once you're in the grocery store, you want to read your nutrition labels, right? Focus on your key areas. Focus on your serving size, right? All numbers are per serving, right? So whatever you see on that nutrition panel that looks a little bit like this, it's for one serving. It's not for the entire container. So if it says 250 calories and you consume the entire container that was supposed to serve 4 people or 4 servings, you would have consumed 4 times the 250. That's 1,000 calories, all right? Check out those items that are of concern. Make sure you glance at the sodium, right? You want to aim for the lower sodium food item. Check out those added sugars. Look for the item with the fiber. You can look in one aisle and there are several different brands of a particular food item. Check them out one day and choose the one that has the lower sodium, the less added sugar, and the one that has a little bit more fiber, right? Let that be your go-to. Check out saturated fat that you want to limit. The saturated fat that tends to put us in a worse off cardiovascular state, all right? And look at your ingredient list. The ingredient list can sometimes be very long, right? Pronouncing some of those items can sometimes be very challenging. Look for items with fewer ingredients, right? That generally is gonna mean that it's less processed, less additives, all right? And those are just some general rules to go by. All right, now we know the nutrition label. If anybody wants more detail, please just let me know, let Adriana know, Audriana know, and we can probably schedule something else. But I think most of us have probably seen this and we've looked at this before. All right, we want to consider the daily values. All right, and I know some of you know that 5-20 rule, right? If the daily value is 5% or less, it means it's low in that particular item, right? If it's 20% or more, it means that it's high. So if you go and you see, let's see, sodium being 7%, that's on the lower end, all right? But if the sodium content was 20% of the daily value, it means that item is high in sodium. And if you are concerned about sodium, concerned for hypertension, cardiovascular health, then that's something that you need to put right back on the shelf and leave it be. Okay? All right. So, hydration and lifestyle, you want to stay hydrated. All right? Drink 8 to 10 glasses of water daily, right? Dehydration worsens fatigue. It affects medication absorption. It impairs your immune function. And 8 to 10 glasses of water, if you're like me, that's a challenge, right? But also consider that the water that your body receives to stay hydrated is not just from bottled water, right? It's not just from the cup of water, but it can be from some of the vegetables that are high in water content, the fruits that are high in water content, the foods, the soups that you consume, right? And you want to think about that as well, all right? Physical activity. Exercise preserves your muscle mass and your bone density, right? It helps to keep your bones not just there, but to keep them strong and dense, all right? You want to aim for 150 minutes weekly of moderate activity, right? Plus strength training twice weekly. Now, research suggests that most people who become physically active can expect lots of benefits. They can expect to see improved body composition and adipose tissue distribution, improved bone density. They can expect enhanced resistance to cold and other infectious diseases, right? There's reduced risk of some cancers, right, with physical activity, improved circulation and lung function, right? Reduced risk factor for cardiovascular disease, improved management of type 2 diabetes, right, guys? Improved sleep, improved cognition, right? Increased resistance to fall and injury from falls, longer life, higher quality of life in your later years. And the list goes on. Please don't discount physical activity. Also, don't put a lot of pressure on physical activity. Physical activity is not only done when we're dressed up in our gym clothes with our gym bag and we go to the gym and we pay for a gym membership. Absolutely not. Physical activity can be conducted right around you, right? You can go for a walk around the block. You can say hi to your neighbors. You can stay inside. The average song is about 3 minutes long. And if you put a playlist together of 3 high energy songs, right? And you dance to those songs, that's about 10 minutes of physical activity. All right? Sorry. If you put 10 songs together, right? That's a full 30 minutes right there, right? So you can have fun with your physical activity. It doesn't have to be high pressure. It doesn't have to start on January 1st. It can start anytime. It can start right now, all right? Think about also the quality sleep. You want to aim for 7 to 9 hours nightly, right? Sleep supports your immune function, your hormone regulation, your overall health, your body's ability to rest and recuperate is also important. And guys, I'm going to say stress management is also important, right? Chronic stress is going to impair immunity, right? You want to learn, practice a couple of relaxation techniques, mindfulness, or activities that you enjoy. Don't just take these things for granted. We are in the 50 plus age group, right? It's important that we take care of ourselves. We may not have somebody else to do it for us. Okay? Now I had some real life scenarios here that I'm gonna just bypass and then just talk about some key takeaways. All right? Nutrition is powerful medicine. Your food choices can impact your immune function, chronic disease, energy levels, quality of life, right? Your musculature, the amount of muscle that your body has, your physical ability, your balance, right? You want to keep that into consideration. Balance and variety are key. Use the plate method. Fill half with colorful vegetables, fruits, 1/4 with lean protein, 1/4 with whole grains, and add healthy fats. And I want to also challenge you guys. Generally, we eat the same 15, 20 foods every single week. Include a new vegetable. Try a new fruit. Try a new recipe. All right? And if you leave with one thing, remember, protein matters, right? For muscle and for immunity. Okay? Aim for 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight, right? Consistency beats perfection. Say it. I know you're all on mute, but say it, please. Consistency beats perfection. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. Every day doesn't have to be where you got your 10,000 steps in, right? Every meal doesn't have to be perfect, but you must consistently be trying, right? To improve, to change. Regular meal patterns, even when simple, they provide better results than if it's just an occasional perfect meal, all right? Small, sustainable changes create lasting benefits, and support is available. You don't have to do this by yourself, right? A lot of you, if you have health insurance, usually they will allow you the opportunity to see and talk with a dietitian, all right? Don't be afraid to explore those opportunities. Don't be afraid of what the dietitian is going to say, all right? The dietitians will always be client focused. They'll be focused on you. Goals, initiatives, monitoring, evaluation, interventions will always be based on you, your lifestyle, and what it is that you need. If you can, be sure to reach out and make an appointment. All right? And I will go ahead and close now. Adriana, thank you so much. And I will open up for questions. All right.
All right. So one of the first questions that you still had remaining in the chat box was if you can talk a little bit about the keto diet, and then I'll pause. And then you got another question about suggestions for fasting, which we talked about pre. It came up again. So if you want to talk about the keto diet and then fasting and then fast food, like, and how, yeah, those three.
Yeah. All right. Well, the keto diet or the ketogenic diet, right? That's an extremely beneficial and useful diet, right? But the uses aren't what you think it is. It's not for who you think it is. It's not for you, right? The ketogenic diet was found to be especially useful in people who had consistent seizures, right? People with epilepsy, and in helping them to manage those seizures, right? They found that when they were on a ketogenic diet, the seizures were lessened, right? The incidence, the extent were less when they were on the ketogenic diet. And listen to what the ketogenic diet is. The ketogenic diet is a high fat diet, right? The ketogenic diet is not just low protein or low carbohydrates. It's a high fat diet, moderate protein, right? And very low in carbohydrates. Now, if you heard anything from what I spoke to you about today, you understand that a moderate protein diet is not necessarily something that's appropriate for you. And definitely a high fat diet is something that we should consider if it is not medically imperative to us. Okay? We hear about these ketogenic diet, we hear about all these things in general context. Okay? Now the general context does not apply to your specific situation, right? Always consider that. Let me see who asked that question. That was Randall. Randall, you all right with that answer? Maybe. All right. All right. And the other question was from Wanda about healthier fast foods. Right? What is that? How to choose healthier fast foods, or what are we asking? Thank you, Randall. So, as a dietitian, right, I don't know how you'd ask me about fast foods, but that's a good question because life is moving really fast, right? There's so much things that we have to consider, so much things that we need to get in for the day. Sometimes sitting down to prepare a gourmet meal is not something that's gonna fit into our schedule, and sometimes a faster, more convenient way of nutriting our body is something that is necessary. Now, if you look around, fast foods are not just McDonald's and Burger King anymore, and even if you go to those institutions, you will find that their menu has changed a whole lot, right? You will see salads, right, as options for you to consume. There are also other fast food establishments that are highly fruit and vegetable based, right? Think about things like Sweet Greens. There is this other place that does bowls where you can get brown rice or white rice. You can add a lot of vegetables and a lot of proteins, right? And it's just as fast as going to something like a McDonald's where you're getting a burger that does not deteriorate for several days, right? You're getting a lot of fries, right? You're not sure about the oil that is fried in, if it's a healthier version of oil, right? But if you need something fast, there are other restaurants and other establishments that are focused on a healthier side of providing meals to you, right, in a shorter period of time. And I must say that each of us sitting here thinking about these questions, right, thinking about our environment, thinking about what we have available to us can make changes, right? There was a time when McDonald's will never have anything green except that one piece of lettuce that's on the burger. No, they have a whole salad that you can consume, and this is because of the advocacy from people. It's from you sitting where you are, making your desires known, right? I am in Washington, D.C., and I remember going into a southeast area. Usually they consider those places like a food desert, all right? They don't usually have fresh fruits and vegetables available. And I came across a massive grocery store. It was a regular giant, but this one was amazing. It was large. The produce section was amazing and fresh and variety, right? They even had little stands with fruits, bananas, oranges, tangerines, and a sign that says, children can take one. They had sections where you could have like a classroom setting, right? You could come and sit. They hired dietitians to be on staff. And all of that is because of advocacy. All of that is because of people clearly stating what it is that they need, what it is that they need for their health. There was a time when Pepsi only made Pepsi. Coca-Cola made soda. Now there is a variety of sparkling waters, right? Very low calorie beverage. If you think of a healthier version, who is going to think of a Pepsi or a Coca-Cola company? But because people insist on foods, insist on changes, insist on things that are healthier for themselves, you see those changes trickling down. So I want to thank you for that question about healthier fast foods, all right? Posing it to me is great. Posing it to those other companies is even better. What they are after is what's in your pocket. And if you refuse to spend what's in your pocket for things that aren't healthy, that aren't nutrients in your body, guess what? Something will change, right? And it's not the action of taking what's out of your pocket. All right? Anything else? I see Randall saying that if it has a drive-through window, they don't have healthy foods.
That's a good point.
That's a good point. And somebody's writing that they like rice bowls with beans, right? When they have those rice bowls, you can choose the rice. You can choose to have white rice or brown rice or have a base of salad, right? They have usually spinach, lettuce, arugula. You can add your veggies to it, right? Think about being as colorful as you can and not forgetting your protein, whether it's animal based or it's plant based.
All right. And so, looking like, yep, I'm starting. So let's do our tradition. That's stop, pause, and give a round of applause to Professor Phillips. So if you can use those emojis, those reactions, and let's just give her a round of applause. And
Thank you.
then I have something extra that we're going to do. So for everyone that is still on this call, please put your name in the chat. You all went all the way through to us to the very end. And so I want to make sure the 50 plus program send you a gratitude gift. So I didn't have the icebreaker ready. So instead of doing the icebreaker, the last 6 people that are here, please note Dree's going to send you something in the mail. So please include your name so I'll be able to find you on the registration to send you an email so that I can mail you your closing 50 plus webinar series token of appreciation. And so, again, Professor Phillips, I want to thank you for carving out the time. It's very clear that you're passionate about this, but also because the audience engaged you from the beginning to the end. So thank you. NMAX, thank you. DCC FAR, thanks you. And then the 50 plus program and NMAC, thanks you. And so until next year, everyone, Thank you. Keep showing up. Please complete that evaluation. If you have additional questions, please put them in the evaluation. I will make sure Professor Phillips get those. If you're in the DMV area, make sure you note that so that if she can do some outreach or her students can do some outreach, that would be a nice partnership. We want to make sure that you all are supported in everything so that you are living thriving lives. All right, so happy holidays, happy Thursday. Drink some water, smile at somebody, look in the mirror and smile at yourself, and just go be great. Thank you all. Bye bye.